This happened a couple of years ago, but I still think about it when I need a pick-me-up. I was working as a data analyst at a mid-sized logistics firm. The job was all right, decent pay, not too stressful, and I actually liked the work. What I didn't like was my boss, Mike. Mike was the kind of manager who thought shouting was a leadership style. He had a habit of micromanaging and taking credit for his team's work while throwing us under the bus when anything went wrong. Anyway, when I started the job, the reporting process was a mess. We're talking hours every day manually copying and pasting data from one Excel sheet to another, then emailing reports to different departments. I knew I could do better, so I spent a couple of weeks working late and built a system using Python and some VBA scripting that automated 90% of the process. It would gather the data, clean it, generate the reports, and even email them to the relevant people, all with a single click. It saved me and the rest of the team dozens of hours every week. Now, here's where I might have messed up. I didn't tell Mike how much of my work was automated. I just kept it running in the background and used the extra time to take on side projects, help coworkers, and, yeah, maybe browse Reddit now and then. To everyone else, I was seen as helpful, efficient, and proactive. To Mike, I guess I looked like I was just doing nothing. One Friday, out of the blue, he calls me into his office. HR is there. We're letting you go for poor performance, he says, barely hiding a smirk. No warning, no PP, nothing. I was stunned. HR looked uncomfortable. They clearly weren't in on whatever game Mike was playing. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just nodded, handed over my badge, and walked out. But here's the thing. I didn't leave empty-handed. Remember those scripts and automation tools I built? They were all stored locally on my machine. Instructions left behind. I had built them during my own time, too. Legally, they were mine. So what happens when you fire the one guy who knows how the entire data system works? Chaos. Week 1, I start getting texts from my old coworkers. Hey, how did you run the weekly sales report? Do you have that Excel macro for the shipping data? I reply politely that I no longer work there and can't help. Week 2, the first round of reports are late. Managers are pissed. Mike tries to run them manually and ends up sending out incorrect data. I hear he got roasted in a meeting. Week 3, a director from another department reaches out to me on LinkedIn. She says she heard I left and wants to know if I'm open to consulting. I say I'm listening. Month 2, I'm brought in as a contractor at 3x my old hourly rate to fix the reporting system. I come in, act all surprised, and say, wow, this is a mess. What happened? Mike is not happy to see me. But the director loves me, so he can't do a thing. I rebuild everything. But this time, I make sure it's all documented, secure, and backed up. I even train a couple of other analysts on how to maintain the system. By the end of the month, things are running smoother than ever. Month 3, Mike gets fired. Apparently, someone dug into the emails and found out that he'd been warned about the reporting issues and had lied about having it under control. He tried to blame the problems on me. You know, the guy who wasn't even there. And that backfired spectacularly. The best part? That director who brought me back? She becomes the new VP of audit. Let me take you back a few years, to the final semester of my master's program in computer science. I was working on my thesis, a neural network model for predicting crop yields based on satellite imagery and environmental data. I've been obsessed with the idea since undergrad and spent months gathering datasets, writing the model, and refining the paper. Enter Eric. Eric and I were in the same cohort. We weren't exactly close friends, but we'd worked on a couple of projects together in the past. I always got the vibe that he was more about the grade than the learning, the kind of guy who'd copy code off GitHub and tweak a few variables to make it his. We'd occasionally meet up in the grad student lounge, where I'd talk about my progress, the bugs I was hitting, and the cool things I was learning. He always seemed interested, maybe a little too interested, but I never thought much of it. Until the week before the university-wide research symposium, where all final-year grad students present their theses. I was in the library doing some final tweaks on my presentation when a friend texted me. Yo, did you and Eric collaborate on your thesis or something? He's on the schedule presenting. All I had were my drafts, GitHub commits, and Google Doc timestamps. But it was all local. Eric must have copied my work from one of the times we shared my screen during a lounge session, or maybe when I stepped away from my laptop. But that's when I realized, if he was bold enough to present it publicly, I could expose him publicly too. And I had a plan. The setup. I spent the next 48 hours preparing 2 presentations. My original thesis, clean, professional, well-polished. Eric's version, the same slides, but with intentional, hard-to-notice errors and a few gotchas embedded throughout the content. You see, I figured if Eric had actually stolen my thesis, there was no way he fully understood it. He could present the surface-level stuff, sure, but I'd added some complex edge cases, counterintuitive results, and one particularly tricky visual that was intentionally misleading unless you knew exactly what you were looking at. I also printed copies of my paper drafts, emails to my advisor, GitHub commit logs, and timestamped screenshots, all neatly arranged in a folder. Then I waited. This symposium, I presented right before Eric. The room was packed, professors, grad students, and some undergrads. Even a few parents were there, including, I'd later learn, Eric's. I went through my presentation confidently. At the end, I thanked the audience and mentioned how excited I was to see other students exploring similar ideas, especially the next presenter. Discussion on it. Eric? He just skipped it, mumbled something like, "This shows promising results in the Midwest region," and moved on. Professors started whispering. I could see my advisor in the back, watching intently. The department chair next to him had her arms crossed. And then the final slide. Eric closed with, "This research has the potential to transform how we approach agricultural analytics at scale." Q&A time. First question was from Dr. Levin, one of the hardest graders in the department. "Dr. Levin, can you elaborate on how you address the overfitting in the Modi's imagery dataset?" Eric blinked, then started rambling about image resolution and cloud coverage, things completely unrelated. Next question. "Professor Ramos, you mentioned the model performed better in Q3 than Q1. Can you explain why, given that the rainfall anomaly was lower?" Eric stammered. "Well, the model, it adjusts for weather patterns dynamically." Another professor interrupted. "But that wasn't in your methods section. Also, plagiarism gets you kicked out. Just in case you didn't read the handbook." The fallout. Eric was expelled from the program. His credits were invalidated, and his prior work flagged for review. Apparently, he had a history of suspicious collaborations, but nothing concrete until now. His parents tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. As for me, I got a departmental award for academic integrity. My advisor helped me publish the thesis, and it actually gained some traction in the agri-tech world. I now work as a data scientist for a climate analytics firm. Every now and then, I still give guest lectures at that university. And when I do, I always tell students, protect your work, and if someone steals it, let them hang themselves with it.